All right. So, welcome everybody. My name is Jay Culkin. I am a youth workforce development coordinator here at Families Together, and I'm here to introduce you to Mimi Phillips, our youth training coordinator here at Families Together. And she's going to be doing a um, training TA call today for collaborative documentation and empowering youth voice in progress notes. So, without further ado, I will give it to Mimi.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. I'm really excited to talk to all of you today about collaborative documentation. Can we go to the next slide, please? So a little bit about myself. My name is Mimi Phillips. I am the youth training coordinator here at Families Together in New York State, and I am dual credentialed as both a youth peer advocate, which means I have lived experience navigating the mental health system on my own behalf, as well as a family peer advocate, which means I have experience navigating systems as a caregiver. And I'm really excited for us to be broaching this topic today. Next slide. So I'd love if everyone would be willing to come off mute, but I totally understand if you're not, and you are welcome to introduce yourself in the chat. But if we could just all go around and say our name, our pronouns, our role, and the county that you work in, that is just one of those ways that we can, just spend some time together and also get an idea of where everyone is coming from as we are statewide.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Shania. My pronouns are they, she, and I am a youth peer advocate and I work in Queens.
I'm Demetrius. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the program manager for YHDP, Rep Housing Rising Ground, and I work in Queens also.
Hey Mimi, hey Jay. Hey y'all. Hey everybody. I'm Malaysia. My pronouns are she, her. Um, I'm a YPA. I experienced homeless youth, youth who experience homelessness, and I work in Queens as well. And Demetrius is my manager or my supervisor, my manager. Same thing, right? Mimi, you used to be I don't used to be right now.
Maury and Jada, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Also, TJ, you're more than welcome to introduce yourself as well. He is a Families Together staff who is just here to support and to just bring his opinions as well.
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jada.
Hi, my here, and I'm also a YPA coming from Queens.
Awesome. So we got a lot of queens in the building. Okay. Okay, understood. I like that. Maury, I know you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself, but I see you're off mute, so please feel free.
Hello, my name is Maury, he, him. I'm a peer mentor, peer advocate in the Bronx.
Awesome. Okay, so basically we have New York City in the building. I love it. I love it. It's really ironic too because Jay originally used to live in Long Island. I am originally from Brooklyn and TJ is also in the New York City area. So I love this. This is kind of cool. Awesome. We're gonna move on to our icebreaker for today. I know if you guys have been around the state, it's been a little cold and people are trying really hard for us to already focus on winter and the secret S word that should not be named that falls from the sky. But it's still fall. It is still fall. So I really wanted to ask you guys, like, what's your favorite fall comfort food? And I want to go first in saying that my all-time favorite fall comfort food right now is gumbo.
My comfort food is right now rice and beans. I'm eating that right now.
Yes, and rice and beans is also a complete protein, so I love that. I see we've got chili with cornbread, delicious. Yes, cornbread is the bomb.com. And beef stew with pasta. Oof, I like it. What else?
Chicken soup.
Chicken soup. Yes, it is about to be soup season.
Mhm.
Ooh, corn muffins with maple butter. Okay, I might have to go on a little road trip to find out what this maple butter in Hannaford is all about. Sounds good. Anyone else want to share their favorite foods? I'm a big foodie. I just like to eat.
My favorite food is pernil because we obviously always make it for Thanksgiving. It's really good. And then there's this dish called yapingachos from Ecuador. Basically, it's basically like potato patties, but it has cilantro and like a lot of cheese in it. So like when you bite into it, it's basically like a moldable mashed potato, and it's delicious.
Ooh. That sounds absolutely delicious, but yes, pernil top down. My favorite thing is when I go and I get my serving and they always make sure to give me a piece of the crispy skin. Because if you're not getting a piece, did you really eat pernil? Like that's my favorite part. I love it. But I'm gonna be messaging you. I need to find out more about these moldable mashed potatoes. That sounds
I
delightful.
got you. Absolutely.
I want dressing though for Thanksgiving. I want dressing. You know, dressing is my gonna be my comfort food.
Dressing is
And
absolutely
gravy.
yes. I was gonna say dressing is the best, but it's the best with gravy. Yes. It sounds like we are all very excited for the upcoming Turkey Day and to just be able to sit around the table and feast with friends in the upcoming months, which is awesome. And as we talk about those kinds of things, I thought that this is kind of a great place to kind of branch into what collaborative documentation is, because if we all brought this to the potluck, we would have full tummies and everyone would feel represented. And that's what matters. So next slide, let's talk about our learning objectives.
Bake your back
So
plate. Oh, sorry, y'all. Yeah.
yes, we can bring you a plate. I love it. Alrighty, so getting into these learning objectives, today we're going to talk about why documentation matters, what we should be including in our documentation with youth, how to make documentation collaborative, and using strength-based language. Next slide, please. I just want to make a quick note. I believe it's really crucial that we recognize documentation requirements differ significantly between agencies across the state. So this means that each of you may encounter unique expectations in your roles. To navigate this effectively, I would be sure to prioritize consulting your employee handbook, ask your supervisor, and review the code of ethics. These resources will help ensure that you're meeting the specific requirements of the state as well as your agency. Please remember to be thorough and informed about these guidelines, as it's not just a formality, but it is essential for your professional practice. Next slide. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, I wanted to pose this question. Why do you believe the documentation is so critical in our work as YPAs?
Um, well, it's important because, you know, one for building, of course, but two, it just shows like a track record of the progress you and the client has made. So yes, I think that's important.
Absolutely, yeah. Anyone else have anything to add? Feel free to add your thoughts in the chat as well.
I have heard this phrase ever since I started working as a YPA that if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. And my mom is also a family peer advocate, and she found these really cute, like it says, but did you document it? It's a keychain. So I was like, this is perfect. I can show them that I have this.
I love that. I feel like you guys hit it on the head. If we go to the next slide, we'll really talk about why documentation is critical in our work. And I love that's like a physical keychain. There's a physical reminder. Also, Maury, did you have something to add?
My bad. I was just gonna say, documentation is important when it comes to also, sharing with your team. Sometimes, like, there's been times where I'm absent, and the only way my team know what's going on is based off documentation.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that part up. So documentation is important for so many reasons. Number one, it is a way of recording and proving the work that we're doing. So that exact quote that you said is on the slide because we say it all the time in peer work. If it's not written down, it didn't happen because we don't have the proof of it. So documentation serves as an official record of the work that you are doing with the youth. And so it basically is like if you didn't write it down, there's no proof that those steps happened, that you met with the youth, and also that means that there's no way to be billed for your services. Documentation helps to improve the coordination of care. So it helps everyone who's involved on a team work effectively and stay on track. Families, as well as our youth, often deal with multiple providers. And so we use our documentation to record a number of important details that may be challenging to remember. Maury brings up a very good point. Sometimes we might be absent, unexpected circumstances come up, and someone may need to meet with that youth on our behalf. And our documentation allows them to be able to jump in exactly where we left off and continue that care without there being a gap in services. Documentation helps to track our progress towards goals. When information is accurate, our documentation can be used to keep track of all the progress that we've made for each of the goals we're working on with our youth. This can help our teams to reflect on the progress that's being made, as well as if progress isn't being made, help us to propose changes in the plan. This informs quality improvement processes as well. We can have well-organized documentation will help our supervisors and directors to make informed decisions on how processes can be better supported and even to expand the program. A lot of times, supervisors will use things like documentation to be able to look at different metrics. So what our time is being spent on the most with youth and how that is actually benefiting the youth. Our documentation also allows for reimbursement, as documentation is necessary for all agencies to be reimbursed for the services that you provide. Now, I want to note that each and every one of you should get specific training on writing a progress note or documentation for your agency, and your supervisor should always be working with you to support you. If for whatever reason you don't know something, please be sure to ask a question. Also, on CTAC, which is where you access the original online trainings, we do have additional trainings that do talk about documentation as well, and we provide those online. So that's another great resource that you can use as you are working on expanding your documentation. Does anyone have any questions on documentation as an official record or how we use that? Alrighty, we'll go to the next slide. All right, so some of you may want to take a snapshot of this slide and use it kind of as a checklist, but we're going to be going over everything that we should include in a progress note. So starting with the beginning, we always want to make sure that we kind of include the summary of the most important details. So the date, the time, and the duration that we spent with our youth, and the type of contact. For some of us, we may meet with the youth in person, but we also might be using telehealth or a phone call, so it's important to include that in your documentation. You should always include the service provided. I know this seems silly because we're all YPAs, but by including that you represent the youth peer support service, this also dictates that there's a necessity for the work that we're doing. Be sure to understand that because our families and youth are working with several different service providers, they're able to easily disseminate who wrote which note as well as what service was being used. So if you are writing your youth peer support note about a meeting you've gone to with the youth, for example, you're supporting them in an IEP meeting, the school is most likely also going to have documentation on that. So they'll be able to see, here's the youth peer support note and here's the school note, and be able to tell those apart because you've included which service you provided. You should always include the goal and the objective that's focused on in the interaction. So All of the youth that we work with typically have a service plan that's written before we start working with them, and we break down the larger goal into smaller objectives. So it's enough to include the objective, but typically we also want to include the progress that's being made towards that bigger goal as well. When we're talking about goals and objectives, be sure to also include next steps. This would be the next steps that you as a YPA are going to be taking to assist the youth in making progress, as well as the steps that the youth would be taking to continue making progress towards the goal. So if we're taking, for example, sometimes I have worked with a youth on trying to make a doctor's appointment. For me as a YPA, sometimes my work looks like gathering a list of providers that takes their insurance so I can get that to the youth by a certain date. But on the other end, my youth needs to go through that list and select a provider and reach out to them. So I would make sure to put that in the notes as next steps so that way I can be held accountable for what I need to do to assist this youth in making the goal and why my work is relevant. But I'm also noting what the youth is going to be responsible for the next steps and what date we sort of talked about that. This does help in terms of looking at progress overall. Now I've set a new 30-day sort of goal, and that's recorded in my progress note. It's also really important that you include the youth actions and the skills that are demonstrated. What this means is that we should include any steps that the young person took towards achieving the goal, even if that hasn't necessarily fostered what we would call progress. We also want to include any skills that the young person demonstrates. And what did you do with the young person to help them make progress? Even if you had a conversation with the youth and shared your lived experience and were able to relate to them, that is something you want to include in your notes. If you spent time with organization skills, you want to write those things in your notes, and you want to make sure that you're being specific. So you could write that we just worked on coping skills, but as a YPA, it would make more sense to be thorough and to write, we worked on deep breathing coping skills, and to be sure that we're marketing those things and being specific. That way, for whatever reason, if the youth forgets the skill that we worked on, or if you as a YPA forget that skill, you can reference your notes and you have a little bit more specific information to move forward. One of the most important parts to note for your progress notes is going to be the response. So regulations state that for the response, we just need to include the response of the youth, but we don't want to guess. You want to save your time at the end of the session to ask the youth for their input. You can say something like, today we practiced deep breathing. What was your experience? We shouldn't be guessing how a youth has responded to something. It's not enough to say, well, they were smiling, they must have been happy. They could be smiling and also equally be uncomfortable. So we want to ask and confirm with the youth as to how they're feeling during the sessions that we have with them and how they're feeling about the coping skills that we're teaching, as well as anything else in the process. And lastly, and sometimes the most difficult thing to note, is challenges, incidents, and the others that are present. When we are noting challenges and incidents, we want to be sure to reframe and to use strength-based language or neutral language so that no bias or opinion is included. Be sure to note if others are present. This is particularly important if we're attending a meeting with the youth. Let's say we are going to the IEP meeting once again. We want to include all the people that were in the room so that we are aware of who was there, what was said, and what needs to happen next. If there is a safety concern or incident, be sure to not only document it in the documentation, but be sure to contact your supervisor, especially if this poses a safety concern. I do just want to say that it's not enough to put a safety concern in our progress notes. Sometimes our supervisors are not reviewing those progress notes until 3 or 5 days after we've submitted them. Sometimes it could even take longer. If there's an immediate safety concern, please ensure that you contact your supervisor while you are still with that youth so you can ensure that they are safe and that you are also safe. And then make sure that you put that in your documentation that you contacted the supervisor and what the next steps were that were taken. Also, just be sure to note that your progress notes should not be a minute-by-minute account of what happened. This should be a summary of key activities. Our progress notes tell the story of what you are doing with the young person to help them towards the goal and their treatment plan. Be sure that we're not making them too long, but they also need to include enough detail for the reader to understand what happened. So writing progress notes is really about finding balance. It's also important to note that if there is ever any legal action related to your work with the young person, that your documentation should be complete and accurate. This protects you as well as the young person that you're working with. Does anyone have any questions about what to include in a progress note? Awesome, we can move on to the next slide. So making documentation collaborative. Most of us in our work right now, we spend our time after the session writing the note rather than working with the youth to write the note. And so one of the things that we could really be using, especially in our roles as a YPA, is collaborating with the youth to do our documentation during the sessions. So this approach, when we work with the youth during sessions to complete the documentation, not only involves the young person that we're working with, but it also empowers youth to take ownership of their story. We should encourage youth to take the initiative. When youth feel like they are in control, they're more likely to be honest and open with us, which enriches the documentation as well as the work that we do with them. Be sure to use the youth's own words. This ensures that their voice is authentically represented. It's important to confirm what's written, which allows them to verify or clarify any details. This act builds trust and accuracy. One of the things I really like to do is, even if I do write a note, before I hit submit or save, I always allow my youth to read the note. That way they can change any wording. Sometimes they catch my spelling mistake. They really like telling me about my spelling mistakes. But I do find that sometimes when they reread something, they're able to quickly assess, oh, actually, I don't like the way that that is written. Because now that they're reading it back, they can understand how someone else who's a total stranger might read that passage and make an assumption or a bias against them. And so my youth sometimes have said, actually, I'd really like for you to use this wording instead, which I have done. I also would urge you to use quotations. I often will quote exactly what a youth says, even if it's not quote unquote politically correct, because at the end of the day, the youth is the expert in their experience. And if that's the words that they choose to describe their experience or themselves, those are the words that I'm also going to use. If a youth is hesitant or declines to participate in documentation, don't worry. This happens more often than we'd like to talk about. But I truly believe you can still make documentation collaborative and involve youth by asking them questions. Ask them to reflect about their perspectives and their experiences. This keeps the focus on the youth and respects their autonomy. By making documentation a collaborative effort, we can foster a sense of empowerment and respect for the youth narrative. Next slide. So, what do you guys think empowerment looks like in documentation? When a youth achieves a goal and you put it in the note, which shines light to it, yes, absolutely. So by being able to note the small progress that a youth is making, sometimes the youth that we're working with, we might be the only person that's really encouraging them. We might be the only consistent support that this person is getting. And so to be able to say to them, not only in person and to their faces, you're doing a good job, you're doing the right things, but then to also be able to document that we are the source of that empowerment. This youth now can understand that, there isn't someone that's just documenting the things that I'm doing wrong or the things that I'm doing bad or my shortcomings or my challenges. I have someone who's also here documenting my successes, the things that I'm doing great, and what my strengths are. Does anyone else have any other examples as to what empowerment looks like in documentation? Showing the youth strengths and growth as well. Yes, exactly. I think one of the biggest things that I have noticed in my documentation when I review it with the youth is the growth. I'm able to actually see when I look at the notes, if I've looked at a note from this October as well as last October, just in general, I can see the growth in my youth. I can see that they're taking initiative. I can see that it's less of us working on direct skill building, but more so they're exhibiting those skills now. They're asking questions, they're more informed. And so my work feels less as though I've taken the lead and I have to do a lot of the background work, and a lot of it is just really trying to support them. I feel as though as I move on with my time with the youth, they build those skills. They're able to do a lot of things more independently, and then they're able to just ask me further questions. So they want to ask questions about employment or next steps, and I can help them find that information. But they're more likely to take the initial steps now to fill out that application rather than to expect that I'm going to sit down and do that with them at the next meeting. They start to take initiative, and I really enjoy that. Next slide. So let's take a look at what the key principles of collaborative documentation are. The first point that we'll talk about is transparency. It's really crucial for building trust with the youth that we work with. So being open about the documentation process creates a safe space for youth to express themselves honestly. By ensuring that the youth we're working with understand where and how our notes will be stored and used, who will have access to them, and how we will be using them as a YPA allows them to make informed decisions about what they'd like to include. Oftentimes, youth may have a fear that as a service provider, our documentation could lead to negative consequences. Sometimes youth are afraid that if we are in the home and we document certain things about their home, they might be removed from the home. They might, get their parents in trouble. Other things could happen, even if they're disclosing to us, risky behaviors that they're taking a part in. And it's really important that we explain to the youth what our responsibility is, because we are mandated reporters. So we want to make it clear as to what it is that we need to report, what that process looks like, as well as what we don't need to report and what doesn't necessarily need to be included in those documentations. Next, we have partnership. This is about working together with the youth rather than doing things for them. It's a mutual collaboration which empowers youth to be active participants in their own story. I partner with my youth by letting them decide how we want to do documentation. Some of my youth are very verbal and they would like to just recite to me at the end of our session what that looks like, and we spend some time just going back and forth and having a short conversation. As I type up the notes, they read them, and they're okay with that. I have other youth that enjoy taking the initiative of sitting with the computer and typing out the notes for themselves. I have other youth that we kind of have like a little outline that says, at the beginning of the session, this is what we work on. We select our goal and our objective, and they like that format. But by partnering with the youth, you can figure out what's the best way to collaborate with them to complete this documentation. Another key principle is respect for lived experience, not just your lived experience as a YPA, but the youth's lived experience. Every youth has a unique journey, and acknowledging this fosters an environment where they can be understood as the experts in their own life. Their experiences can be valued and honored. We also want to move to a strength-based approach. We highlight the strengths of the youth rather than focusing on deficits, and this can have a profound positive impact. This allows youth to know that we are here to recognize and build on what they do well, not put them down for what they still might need assistance with. And finally, our collaborative documentation as YPAs should always be youth-driven. Youth-driven documentation means letting the youth steer the conversation. It's the very reason why I use the car, is because we often talk about putting the youth in the driver's seat and us being in the passenger seat. While we can show up every day as a YPA, it's really about the youth and the work that they're going to do and their participation. So by allowing our youth to take control, we ensure that their voices are at the forefront of our work. This gives them agency and ownership over their narrative, as well as their stories and their actions. Overall, we're giving them the agency over their lives and the decisions that they make. These principles lay the foundation for truly collaborative documentation, and I would encourage each of you to just think about taking one step and how you can integrate this into your practice. Does anyone have any questions about collaborative documentation so far before we start talking about the ethical part? All right, we'll move on to ethics and legal considerations. Alrighty, so all of us know that as a YPA, ethics and legal considerations are also at the forefront of our work, and we oftentimes see this in our documentation. So number one, confidentiality. Confidentiality is very important. As YPAs, we must ensure that all personal information is kept secure and shared only with those who have the right to know. This process builds trust and a safe environment for collaboration with our youth. This ensures that sensitive details are documented in a way that respects privacy, and we should always avoid including unnecessary personal information that isn't relevant to the goals or progress with our youth. Next, informed consent. We need to ensure that everyone involved fully understands what it is that they're agreeing to and what they're comfortable with. This is about respecting autonomy and making sure that the youth has the information they need to make informed decisions. This might include explaining to a youth what documentation is, as well as how it's going to be used, and confirming always that they're comfortable with what you've written in your documentation before it's finalized or submitted to a supervisor. Finally, compliance with legal standards is non-negotiable. As YPAs, we have to stay up to date with the latest regulations and ensure that our practices are always aligned with them. This not only protects us, but it helps to protect our organizations and upholds our commitment to ethical practices. Please note that your notes must meet both agency and Medicaid requirements while still reflecting the youth voice. And I believe that this balance should be put into the language as well. To do so, I would say document your facts objectively. Document what was said, what actions were taken, and any relevant observations. Avoid vague statements that could lead to confusion or gaps in care. Do not include unnecessary personal details or details that the youth asks you not to, as this could violate privacy. Remember that the documentation is always a legal record, so you should write as though this will be reviewed by the youth, their family, or even potentially a court. As a practical tip before finalizing a note, I like to ask myself, does this accurately reflect what happened without labeling or bias? Would the youth feel respected if they read this? So sometimes I think about this even in the emails that I'm sending to my supervisor or emails that I'm sending if I'm referring someone out for a service. And so this is one of those things that we can just keep in mind as we're working on all types of documentation. Does anyone have any questions about HIPAA or the ethical and legal considerations of documentation? All right, next slide. So I couldn't put together these slides without talking about the virtual setting. Some of our youth we might see less often, and we are currently moving in an age where sometimes we are providing these services virtually. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the practical strategies that we can use in the virtual setting. So first, we can use screen sharing. This is a powerful tool that allows us to collaborate in real time. This ensures that both the provider and the youth are on the same page, both literally and figuratively. You can even show your documentation in real time so that the youth can see what it is that's being recorded. This might be really helpful if you're reviewing a care plan or putting together a crisis intervention plan for someone as well, so that they can see step by step how this documentation is put together. Next, we should be using secure platforms. It's crucial to prioritize the security and the privacy of our interactions. All platforms that you use should comply with the legal requirements and protect sensitive information. In other spaces, some YPAs have mentioned the use of AI to help with documentation. I always suggest that you are sure to refer to your agency's policies and back to your supervisor in regards to the use of AI tools. But if your agency does allow the use of AI tools, please be sure to use HIPAA compliant tools for co-writing notes and to ensure that you are not inputting any identifying information, as sometimes these things are recorded on the back end and you're not really sure who they can be seen. Lastly, we should always aim to enhance engagement during virtual sessions. This can be achieved by inviting participation and creating an interactive environment. Always encourage questions or feedback to make the youth feel more involved and valued. Ask for youth input both verbally or even typed. You can even use chat features for the youth to suggest wording. Please remember that these strategies are not really about the technology. They're about building meaningful connections and ensuring that our virtual interactions are just as impactful as our in-person interactions. Next slide. So traditionally, documentation was something that providers wrote and the youth simply just signed off on. So now we're shifting towards a more inclusive approach where the youth gets to become a co-author of their story. So this isn't just about writing. It's about encouraging participation without applying pressure. It's really important that as YPAs, we offer options that suit each individual, whether a youth prefers typing, dictating, or just reviewing what's being written. This flexibility helps in truly allowing the youth to own their voice and take responsibility for their narrative. Please keep in mind the power dynamics that can be at play in the work that we do. As a YPA, although we are a peer, we're oftentimes seen as another service provider. So we tend to be the person who has the power, whether that's over the information or over access to a program or even over a referral. As such, while we're peers and technically we're on the same level, some youth may view this as a power dynamic in which we have the power and they are lacking. So, by being able to involve youth in the process, including documentation, we actually can empower them. This is a way to balance the scales and to ensure that all of the youth stories are told in their own words. As we move forward, I want you to think about this approach to transform documentation into a collaborative and empowering experience for everyone involved, including yourself. Think about the ways that you could collaborate with your supervisor potentially to do your own documentation when you have supervisions or when you are speaking on behalf of other YPAs. Next slide. So using strength-based language. Strength-based language is crucial when documenting youth interactions, as this not only influences the youth themselves, but also others who read these notes. You should highlight their abilities, efforts, and progress, which can promote hope, resilience, and empowerment. This approach encourages a mindset of growth. Instead of framing challenges as failures, consider them areas for growth. This shift can make a significant difference in how youth perceive their journey. Remember to adopt neutral or positive phrasing instead of judgmental terms, which is key to fostering an inclusive and supportive environment. I always ask this question, but feel free if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. Can you think of a time in which your use of strength-based language actually helped foster a better relationship or build rapport with the youth? So one of the things that I can think of is I had a youth that I worked on who was really struggling with another provider that they had. And this was a mental health provider that they were seeing, and they consistently felt as though when they attended therapy sessions, they were not getting the support that they needed from this provider. And when they read the notes that this provider wrote on them, the language that this provider used was mostly negative, or I would say kind of neutral. This left the youth that I was working with feeling very downtrodden. They felt as though this person didn't see, places where they could grow, and they felt as though they honestly just didn't see them. And when the youth came to me, they ultimately said, I just want to change therapists. However, the problem was that there was no one in our area who was accepting new patients and accepted the youth's insurance. But they were deeply in a place where they needed to have a mental health professional in order for them to not only receive the medications that were necessary for them to balance their mental health and to cope, but they also needed it because it was court mandated. And so ultimately, the conversation that I ended up having with this youth was, what do you think about it? And the youth felt as though the issues they had with the therapist were honestly based from a place that whenever the youth spoke about certain things, the therapist would try to have them reframe and change the language. And it just wasn't culturally aligned with what the youth was normally, told. And so this became a source of conflict, and they didn't feel as though, based on the power dynamics, they were able to do this. When I notated this conversation with the youth and had them read it, I actually notated the fact that they were really good at being able to identify what the issue was, but also advocate for themselves and their needs, as well as that they had a very good understanding of their cultural norms and the cultural bias that seemed to exist between their therapists. After the youth read this at the very end of our session, they actually cried and they broke down and they said, I feel as though you're the first person who saw me, and that the way that you've written this makes me feel like what I'm saying to you and what I'm trying to get done is right. Ultimately, we ended up sitting down and having, the therapist come in and having a conversation with the FPA, me as the YPA, the youth, the parent, and the therapist. And we were able to explain to them why culturally the approach that they were using just wasn't working with the youth and why they didn't feel like they were making progress. And one of the greatest things for me was to watch that youth in that meeting be able to assert themselves. And it was simply because when I saw them, instead of framing everything that they did as them being combative or them being, unwilling to go to therapy or judgmental, I was able to frame all of those in positives. This youth was really good at advocating for themselves, even though someone else might see that as a negative, and that, even in advocating for themselves, they refused to attend. That was the only way that they felt as though they could have an adult listen to them. So I would encourage you to use strength-based language and to be mindful of the ways that that can actually be something that changes the minds of the youth that you're working with, positively affects them, and allows them to know the strength and the capabilities that they have. All right, we will move on to the next slide, which is what this looks like in practice. So we should always aim to use person first and strength-based language, which helps us to prevent stigmatization. For example, instead of writing non-compliant, you can describe the situation factually. For example, the youth expressed a preference for one-on-one support today, or perhaps the youth expressed difficulty following the plan due to feeling overwhelmed. We want to avoid judgmental or diagnostic terms unless they are part of an official assessment by a qualified professional. I just want to note, once again, we are not therapeutic qualified professionals, so I'd be very careful about using language that has to do anything with a diagnosis. Be mindful of cultural and identity considerations, as language should affirm the youth's voice and experience. Another example might be that a youth struggles with anger management or big emotions. Instead, we could rephrase this and say our youth is working on developing coping strategies for when they have strong emotions. Does everyone understand how using the strength-based language reflects a more positive view of our youth? Yes. Awesome. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? You can even bring up, these things for in practice for you as a YPA. I just want to give you guys space to also participate in the conversation. All right, we will move along to the next slide. I think, there we go. Awesome. So let's dive into the benefits of collaborative documentation. So this approach is not just about recording information. It's honestly about skill building. When a youth actively participates in the documentation process, they can develop important skills that contribute to their personal growth. They are practicing written communication skills. They are practicing advocating for themselves. And these are really great skills that they can work on with us. Collaborative documentation also promotes autonomy, agency, and accountability. By centering the youth's voice and placing them in the driver's seat, we empower them to take charge of their journey. This active involvement builds trust between the youth and the professionals, which reinforces the therapeutic relationship. Moreover, it aligns with the treatment plan by reinforcing the work that's done and setting clear boundaries for the professional development of our relationships. This ensures that everyone is on the same page and we are all working towards the same goals. These benefits highlight the importance of collaboration and empowerment and how they can positively impact the youth's experience as well as the outcomes. I'm not gonna lie, for me, the best key benefit out of all of this is that honestly, it will save you time. I kid you not. So, if you use collaborative documentation, meaning that you get your documentation done with the youth during your sessions, you won't need the office time to get caught up on your documentation. I also just want to take a moment to ensure that if this is something that you want to change, that you're sure to give yourself grace. Do not expect yourself to shift from the current documentation process that you're doing now, where you do all of your documentation by yourself, to a fully collaborative approach without it taking, some bumps in the roads. I would say that you should do this slowly, and try to kind of bring in one thing at a time. I would not expect yourself to all of a sudden go from every session being notated after to every session being notated during. And if you try to set that expectation for yourself, you will most likely find that it doesn't work and you'll be disappointed. So I just want you guys to also set realistic expectations for yourself and to give yourself grace whenever you're changing any of your professional habits, as it does take time. For this, I would suggest that if collaborative documentation is something that you want to incorporate, be sure to take notes and bullet points during your session, which you can start to clean up after. This will help you to figure out what your groove is and how this best works for you as well as the youth that you serve. Be sure to talk to your supervisor, and I would recommend starting with the youth that you have really strong rapport with. Not every situation will allow for collaborative documentation. For example, you might be in the community and working on skills, or you might be attending a space and not necessarily be in a private place in which the youth may want to talk to you openly about their goals and their objectives. And so use this at your discretion. But I would say that as YPAs, we should be pushing for collaborative documentation over just doing it at the end of our sessions by ourselves. Next slide. So just to go over the key takeaways, number one, documentation is more than compliance. It is a tool for empowerment. Collaborative documentation can play a pivotal role in shifting our power dynamics as it transforms the process into a partnership with youth, which fosters a more engaging and inclusive environment. It's also essential to highlight the impact of language in this context. By using person first and strength based phrasing, we can inspire hope and encourage growth with the youth that we work with. This not only supports the individuals we work with, but also reinforces a positive outlook on their journey. Please remember that as a YPA, the words that we choose have the power to uplift and motivate. Let's use them wisely to make a meaningful difference. The next slide just has some resources. All of you that are in attendance will receive an email from Joanna that has the rest of this, and some of these resources will be attached if you do have any interest in looking at them. Some of them are additional webinars that are on collaborative documentation specifically for the work of YPAs, but also even go into collaborative documentation in clinician notes, and it does include some more statistics as to why this is helpful. Does anyone have any questions? Can you go to the next slide, please, Jay? Alrighty, so as with all of our TA trainings and professional development opportunities, we always want to hear from you guys and hear your feedback about what we did well and what we could improve on. So we will go ahead and post the link in the chat. Jay, if you could do that. And we encourage all of you to fill out this Survey Monkey. We do truly honor all of your feedback, and it does impact the way that we continue these professional developments. So if there are skills that you would like to see, if there's formatting that you would like to see, differences in engagement, whatever it is, please feel free to fill out that feedback form so that Families Together can make sure that your voices are heard and that we are doing our best to make sure our professional development fits the needs of you all as YPAs. Moving on from the survey, I'll just go over some quick upcoming events that we have. Most of you will be familiar with this flyer on here. It is our upcoming events for YPAs. Now, I want to note at the top, it does say May through November, and we're in November, but fear not, all of these will be continuing on for the new year in 2026. We just are updating our flyers. All of the times for these events will be staying the same, and so you will still find that the Lived Experience Cafe is on the fourth Wednesday. Our Lived Experience Cafe is an affinity space for YPAs and other credentialed youth peer workers to come and talk about their work as YPAs, what's going well, what's not going well, things that they need assistance with. It's honestly just a really great conversation. I love it. And I love when we have lots of different people that come, as well as a really good networking opportunity. I know sometimes the YPA role can be lonely, and so we do often connect with people from other agencies as well as statewide. Our next Lived Experience Cafe will be coming up November 26th. I know it's the day before Thanksgiving, but we're going to be here. So if you, have the time and just want to pop in for an hour, we will be there and we would love to have you. Our youth peer meetings are open for ages 12 through 30. I would highly recommend that if this is not something you're interested in, but you do know youth even that you work with who are interested, please, please, please share. This space is not just for credentialed YPAs, it's for our youth who are all the way down on the spectrum at 12 years old, and they just know that they're interested in this work or advocacy or government or policy or any of those things. It's a space to have open conversation about career development, networking, policy, and just all the different things that are going on in our youth sphere. So the next meeting will be on the second Wednesday of December, which is going to be December 10th, as well as this would be our monthly TA trainings. So you guys have been here. It's a professional development opportunity. It is recorded, and all of these videos will be housed on our YouTube. So if you want to revisit this video, please feel free to. They should be put up in about a week on our Families Together YouTube page. If not, and you just have some friends or some peers that you want to share this with, please, please, please always feel free to share our TA trainings or to just take a look in our library if there's some skills that you also want to work on. Our monthly TA trainings, we will be skipping the month of December due to the holiday, but we will be back in full force January 15th, and we will be excited to see you then. For other opportunities that we have here at Families Together, we have our mentorship program. Sorry, next slide, Jade. We are currently asking for both individuals and organizations who work with youth. So if you are interested as a YPA yourself, or if you want to pass this along to your supervisors, or if your agency is interested, we are looking for people that are interested in becoming mentors as well as mentees. This is a new mentorship program that Families Together is starting. But we're really excited for YPAs to be helping other YPAs grow. So if that's something that interests you, please scan the QR code. There's an interest form that you can fill out there, and we would be more than happy to find you guys at our mentorship program. That's a great question. I am not part of the mentorship team, so I'm not sure if anyone on Families Together staff will be a part of like the mentors that you guys can get paired with, but I will happily ask the Youth Power team since they're running that, and I can get back to you guys about that. It's a good question. Next slide. another wonderful leadership opportunity that we have here for you YPAs is always getting onto our Youth Peer Advocate Credential Advisory Committee, so our YPACAC. So if you are currently credentialed and you are interested in being a part of a team that helps us to uphold the credential as well as anything else that's youth related through Families Together, there's another interest form that you can fill out. You would scan the QR code. As a reminder, these meetings that you're committing to are monthly and they're also virtual and they are also a paid opportunity. So those who are on the committee are paid quarterly for their work and their time spent here. If that's something that interests you, please, please, please feel free to apply. Last but not least, we'll just go over our next TA training. As another reminder, we will be skipping the month of December, but we very much look forward to seeing all of you in January of 2026, where we will be tackling cultural humility and serving diverse youth. Jay, if you can just go to the last slide. Yep, so that's the next one for the TA training. That will be January 15th for all of you. And then last slide, I just want to thank you all for attending. Here is our Families Together link tree. So you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. We're also on LinkedIn. And if you guys need any further information, have questions about collaborative documentation, would like to get in contact with me personally, again, my name is Maiko or Mimi Phillips. I'm the youth training coordinator here. The best contact information would be by email at mphillips@ftnys.org, or my work phone number is 585-616-3573. If you have any further information that you need for the YPA credential, your best contact information there would be ypacredential@ftnys.org, where you can reach out to our entire credential team. And again, we do offer as well one-on-one technical assistance. So if you need any additional professional development skills or assistance, we are always here for you and your agency. Without further ado, that's all I've got for you guys today. So we will still be here. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, would like to stick around, please feel free to do so. And if not, please enjoy the rest of your day and happy holidays.
Thank you, everybody. There's a link in the chat. By the way, it took me a while to get that link, but there's some technical difficulties. But the link in the chat for the survey is please take the survey.
Thank you so much for that, Jay.